Is anybody going to say anything? Hola! What's up, everybody? You caught us on the insider, but welcome, welcome, welcome. We're going to go slow today because I don't know who's going to pop on right away. So I am Denicia.
And I'm
Hey,
Frank.
on the block with Jen, and this is my partner in crime and objections.
Frank from Talk with Frank Goodin.
That is correct. So here we have Jen from On the Block with Jen and Frank from Talk with Frank Goodin. You know how this works, man. Subscribe, hit the notification bell. We do objections on both our channels, once over here, once on Frank's page, then back over here, and then back on Frank's page. Okay, so please subscribe to both our pages, hit the notification bell.
And I gotta say, I mean, objections is dope, as they say.
Yeah.
It's dope because it's funny when we get out here on these YouTube streets and we see different. I have seen several times people on other streams kind of fall into conversations that you and I have absolutely chopped up completely with a panel in a very, very, deep and just a beautiful way.
Yep.
And I've seen these conversations, people get tripped up on these subjects on other channels. They get tripped up. Objections is dope. We don't get tripped up. We handle these conversations in a very very enlightened way, intellectual way, and we go in and we bring our objections, and the conversations are beautiful.
They really are. And we do our research, right? A lot of people on these YouTube channels, no shade, but a lot of people on these YouTube channels are talking heads, right?
Yeah.
They're just hanging out. And we love hanging out with our following, but we research, right?
Yes.
So we know what we're talking about. And that way we can tell you what the truth is, right? So
Definitely at least bring an informed perspective. We really try our best to bring you an informed. We don't want to just be pulling stuff out. You know what I'm saying? We want to try to have an informed perspective in this. So that's what's really beautiful. We both do that.
Right. And we have those days, but not normally, not today, because today there may be a little verbal fisticuffs. Before I begin, and we like jumping right in, well, I do. Frank has a nice intro on his page where you relax and grab your tea, right? He's a lot more calm than me. He's not from
We gonna hook you up though. We're gonna
I'm
hook
from New
you up.
York, so I'm always running for the 4 train and the 5 train is like, we got, I gotta get there. But again, if you're just joining us, thank you so much. Another episode of Objections where Frank and I object fiercely but respectfully, and we also welcome that from our panel and our people in the comments. Please subscribe and hit the notification bell. It is good to see you again. Today is going to be a hot topic, okay? Feelings will be hurt, but always remember, like I say, when you log off, you'll get back to the laundry and your dinner, and you'll forget everything that happened here, okay? So keep it light, keep it respectful, but please object passionately. We're going to put you on the clock and give you your 2 minutes. So today's subject is subscribe and hit the notification bell.
Okay.
Today's subject is a deep one, but we may keep it light. We'll see. Why do Black gender war channels thrive on YouTube? Okay, and that's a mouthful, so I'll say it again. Why do Black gender war channels thrive on YouTube? Why is that? And you're probably wondering, well, what's a gender war channel? So if you guys are running the YouTube streets, people like Cynthia G and Kevin Samuels, most famously, are what I would refer to as gender war channels, where it's even if the host, right, is not talking about gender wars, the following, the panel, the comments turn into gender wars, and they turn into gender wars very, very furiously and fiercely, where men and women are attacking each other and blaming each other and pointing the finger at each other. And there are a plethora, a myriad of these channels on YouTube, and they're hosted by Black men and women, and the followings are Black men and women. So there's something going on here that I think is very, very much so worthy of peeling back some layers on, because these channels do thrive. Okay, it's not like these, Kevin Samuels at 1 million followers now. I don't know how many Cynthia G is, but she's very, very, very popular with women, as Kevin is with men. So let's unpack this a little bit. Why are these gender war channels, specifically Black gender war channels, that are more famous for this type of dialogue? Why do they thrive on YouTube? And my partner in Objections, Frank, says
Mhm.
has a theory. So let's hear.
Yes. Ha. Well, it's funny, and just to give us a little, give everybody a little bit of a insight on how I'm sort of approaching it and thinking about it.
Mhm,
I kind of like to always try to um, envision or imagine how we got, say, here, because things almost never just arise in a vacuum and then it's a thing here in the present.
mhm.
As we know, we always have there's a past. There's always
Right.
a sort of a leading up to. And it seems with this one, just like pretty much any other subject, I think this has a past. And so first I kind of want to go back and talk about it maybe in terms of okay, gender war channels. What sort of, like you did, you try to kind of try to define what we mean when we say gender war. So I
Mhm,
want to go into that a little bit. I feel like that there's history here in that Black men and Black women, and really you can say men and women, we have had different perspectives on dating, and at the very least, interested in dating and relationships, forever, really, And so here, I'm going to try to pull us back to maybe roughly the 60s, maybe the 70s, where when we talk about having conversations about, or at least having shows on that are broadcast about dating,
mhm,
back in the 70s, if you kind of think back a little bit, there are shows like what I can remember, The Dating Game.
mhm,
If we remember The Dating Game, there was a show with married couple. I forget the exact name of it, but there was a show where married couples would come on and compete against each other. But it was really, kind of, I forget the name of the host, but he would kind of ask tongue-in-cheek type questions, and they just have a lot of fun with that. But Dating Game comes to mind, and maybe there are a few other shows. And then you get into the 80s and into the 90s with personalities coming in and talking about, men are this way or women are this way, or just points of view about dating, about relationships.
mhm,
And I think maybe things started along those lines where um, it seems as if there's kind of always been a conversation. Now, before YouTube, there was, say television, broadcast television, and say even before TV, or at least during TV, these kinds of conversations were always held with ourselves, same gender. So the fellas would be in the barbershop
mhm.
talking about whatever their theories are, how to get the ladies, or their conquests, or if they were serious about it, I found this one who I want to hook up with. And then I'm not on the ladies' side, but maybe you can jump in and tell me that maybe on the ladies' side, in the hair salons or in places where the ladies were, maybe a similar type conversations were happening. I'm gonna stop there and kind of throw it to you. Is that, in terms of a little bit of the history, does that ring true? And what other kinds of things?
Yes, I absolutely agree. The guys in the barbershop, we
Hmm.
were doing the same thing, right? The girls get together and talk about dating and guys and the dates that went bad and the people that they're falling for, et cetera, et cetera.
Hmm.
But it wasn't vitriolic. So
Right.
I'm gonna throw it back to you. It
Okay.
was vitriolic, like the dating game, which actually they revamped. The dating game is back on. Not as
Hmm.
fun as it was. It's a little corny. And
Hmm.
the other show that you spoke about, like those were fun, like you said, tongue in cheek type of things where we kind of, lightly made fun of our differences, right? Venus versus Mars, and men do this and women do this, but it wasn't vitriolic. It
Right.
wasn't so hateful. There wasn't a war per se where now,
Right.
people are threatening people's lives on
Right.
the channel. So we can't, take it light. So what do you think about that? Like,
Yeah. So
where did
leading up, and this is kind of what and this is what I kind of wanted to do. So it's like, so I think part of the reason why there was not a quote unquote difference of opinion that escalate, I'm going to say these things over time, things have kind of escalated, is because we, for the most part, men were on the men's side right? And women were on the women's side. We were together, and we were all, I'm a dude like you. Let's talk about how, such and such these ladies be tripping. Or on the lady side, let's talk about how these dudes be fronting. Or, what. So I think that when the conversations were subject back in the day,
Mhm.
mostly to same sex,
Mhm.
then you don't have this cross section or intersection of a different opposing thought. And so
Okay.
even when you get into the 90s, even this is all pre-internet, and then even in until the 21st century, then what we see is a slow exposure of more of this kind of thinking. And really, to me, YouTube bringing the availability so that anybody, just not, now we're not talking celebrities who are leading the way maybe on a school of thought, but just any and every person can come on and kind of give their perspective on the whole thing, whatever they want to talk about. Then you begin to have this opportunity where, okay, ladies may think a certain way, have a certain school of thought about things related to dating guys, and the fellas might have a school of thought about overall dating the ladies. And here's where I think things began to uptick: when the men started voicing their points of view on YouTube. Whereas in the past, I don't know if there's ever been a situation where a collective group of men could come into a public space, so to speak, before it was limited to the barbershops and all these other things, that we talked about, come into the public space and start talking about, this is how we see it,
Mhm.
and how men saw it. Um, these spaces congregated, so I can't speak on the lady side, and maybe when I throw it back to you, you can talk about how a Cynthia G, can grow. But from the men's side, once men started saying these things and they found synergy and they were agreeing with each other about a lot of the overall things, and many of these things were commentaries about where they thought the state of women were overall. Okay, now you've got the recipe for number one, disagreement. And then these are regular people. These aren't people who, went and got their a bachelor's in communication or psychology or anything. These are just regular, normal people, normal jobs, expressing themselves. And and one thing that you do when you go to college is that you learn how you're regularly exposed to differences, no matter what it is. And a lot of the, for the most part, you learn at least how to approach differences. And you're exposed to a lot. You come in, you kind of in a formal way have kind of a debate about this or that, and it's a normal thing. Generally speaking, that's not something that we get in the normal real world. People they get up, they live in their neighborhoods, they go to work right up the street, they come home, they surround themselves with friends who think like them. This is the Facebook thing. We see it happening in Facebook. You have like-minded. And so now when we get in a situation where on YouTube, folks can kind of get together and, say things that the other side doesn't like, then you have heated discussions, and those turn vitriolic quick for a lot of different reasons. And so for me, this is what I'm talking about. I feel like I think people have always been interested in relationships, men and women. And it's always been a hot thing to talk about romance,
Mhm.
relationships, but the points of view have been different. Now they're being exposed, and the fellas are coming out with some very pointed, very, very significant criticisms and comments about where they think the ladies are. The ladies like, whoa, 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 wait a minute. And so I think, I'm gonna throw it back to you. I feel like this is how we're getting to this point where we can actually call them gender wars, and why YouTube channels are thriving off of it.
Okay, well, I think we have a bingo because you did definitely explain why they're thriving, right? It's always been a thing. Relationships, love, hate has always been a thing. But I'm not letting you off the hook with just,
Okay.
oh, men have a platform now. I think it's deeper than that because it's not just conversation. We cannot ignore that it is vitriolic, that it is bitter, that it is hateful, that it is angry. Very, very much so. This isn't, regular, but you made a great point. A lot of the people online don't have a communications degree. They didn't study psychology. They barely communicate in their homes with their families, barely. So now it's like I have a keyboard to say everything I wanted to say. But I want to push back a little bit on the men because I think men have been putting up a front for a very long time, some self inflicted, right? And some, that's how their dads raised them. This is what a man is. This is what a man does. This is what a real man would X, Y, and Z. And I think they themselves, okay, some voluntarily, like I said, some involuntary, have carried that around. And now that they have social media and hundreds of buddies in the comment section to agree with how they really, really, truly feel, and now they really, really get to be themselves, now they're vomiting their emotions and their bitterness and their vitriol all over these comments. So I hear men say a lot, there's never been a platform for us. No, we could say it's not really a platform, more so it's just a group of really angry, bitter men who fail at relationships hanging out. So in my opinion, it's a bigger barbershop, more men, and angry men, right? Barbershops usually, I've been to a barbershop once or twice, and my dad or something. I've heard the arguments in there. I mean, these dudes are going in about sports and boxing, and but now it's changed, right? It's changed, and I'm like, the arguments are still the same, but this whole environment, it's just different, man. It's ugly. And I would like to ask, Big Mike Drum, I see you backstage. I will put you on. Me and Frank got it. I took my.
Copy it up. Yeah.
Okay, Jabari, thank you. Jabari said it was the newlywed game. We're all showing our age here now.
That's it. Newlywed.
Right? Jabari also made a great point. He said the people that have been hurt find a home on these platforms. And despite the efforts of many of the hosts, people bring in their own bias and vitriol. I agree 100% because I even said about the Kevin Samuels and the Cynthia G, right? These people just have opinions. None of them are saying go out and curse at women. None of them are saying go out and punch that dude in the face. They're just giving opinions like Frank and I, right? But because people come with their own bias, right? They're coming like, no. And then that's the warring ensues in the comments. So I don't blame the host. I think Cynthia G is right half the time. I think Kevin Samuels is right half the time. And I know that they're entertainment. But when people start using them as gospel and validation for their bitterness, their lack of self-awareness, their lack for being able to communicate, therein lies the problem and the wars start. But Frank, is there a racial component? Now, I don't frequent white YouTube, right? We're all in the YouTube streets, right? This is where we hang out. Is there a racial component? Because I said Black gender war channels. Are there gender war channels where white people are going at each other with such vitriol and bitterness and hate, other than if you're Republican or Democrat?
It's a good question. It's funny. So it's one of these things where I think you're right. We would have to kind of go and be in those particular streets to know for sure. What I can say is that I have been exposed to Caucasian, white folks who have channels that describe themselves as, speaking for the Manosphere, as we know. And it's not the Black Manosphere, it's just the Manosphere. And I could go to YouTube now and do a quick search on at least one guy who I know, white guy, who speaks, does not speak on it from a cultural or ethnic perspective, speaks on it from his perspective, and he's a white guy. So he'll tell these stories about, when he was younger, and, he actually has a history with working with women. He was a bartender at various bars and even strip clubs and different things. And so for him, and I think he said the DJ. And so he tells his story about, from that perspective, dealing with women who are in those environments years and years after years, and how they are, and blah, 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 blah. And so he has a Manosphere channel that talks about it, and you could probably classify him in the gender wars genre that we're doing here, because he speaks about these subjects from that particular perspective, in terms of warning men, hey, this is what ladies from his perspective really are. This is what they're really doing. I've seen it all, blah blah blah. And so he gives the game from his perspective. So I think it's something that is likely to be out there. You can probably find a white lady who is doing a similar thing from her perspective,
So
probably out there.
do you think that black men adopted the manosphere from white men?
Um, it's hard to say. I tend to think not. Um, but I don't know, because it's hard to say. You have to go back and now start trying to be a YouTube historian, and seeing, okay, well, who did it first? Who
Right.
was jumping out there? Who blew up first? Who got famous first? Uh, from what my instincts are telling me that regular people now in this day and age may be inspired by, say, the success of a Kevin Samuels, or even before that, a Tommy Sutter. I don't know how to say it. Yeah, and people before. I think maybe they are just jumping on, and they're being influenced by these people, and then they have their own perspectives they want to bring. A lot of times, as you might say, just echoing what the big boys are saying and what the big
Right.
girls are saying,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes offering things that is coming from their own perspective. I do want to echo a point that Big Mike mentioned, and I feel like he is what he said was, it's just not one side, and I think you'll acknowledge I think it's coming from both sides. Um, and so, to answer your question directly, I feel like who knows, black or white is definitely happening. I do have a different theory, but I want to throw it back to you. I just wanted to answer that question you have.
I definitely want, yeah, I co-sign that. It's for both sides. And it goes without saying, Objections is not a show where we're ever going to bash one gender or the other. That's not what happens here, even though we have strong opinions from female perspective and
In
male
the male
perspective.
perspective, absolutely.
We don't do that here. This isn't I mean, if you want to see men bashed, you got to go to Cynthia G. If you want to see women bashed, some people may disagree, but go to K.
Right? You go say KS.
We may disagree, but we don't rate women or men here, right? We talk about our likes and dislikes, but it's definitely on both ends. That's why I said gender wars, because I had to unfollow Cynthia G. And you would think she's a woman, I'm a woman. Hey, I can relate to a lot of what she says. And like Kevin Samuels, she's right a lot of times with her theories, but it was just too toxic for me. And because I don't have personal unresolved issues with men, though I've been in bad relationships, she's going to be appealing, but for only so long, right? So that's how I see men who are into Kevin Samuels. He's entertaining, sometimes even hilarious. But how can you subscribe to someone? How can someone resonate with you if you do not have unresolved issues with women? Because I couldn't take Cynthia G after a while. I'm like, girl, it's way too dark. It's way too miserable. I've had my problems with men, but you're all out, you know what I mean? Witch hunt. Like,
but you have to acknowledge that it's going to be ladies out there that's going to be living that with her and rock with her, right? Or do you, because like, even though it wasn't for you, because I feel like you are a fully self-actualized, normal human being who, if you're hurt, you're going to recover in proper ways.
Yes. It took me a while.
Right.
It took me a while. It took me a while to get here. But yes, I agree with you. Her comments are nothing but women. I mean, and it's hundreds and hundreds. This isn't like a dozen women agreeing with her. It is hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of women that, she resonates with.
Right. And they're not going to disagree with her, right? I mean, they're not going to whoever those people are, however number that is, they're going to be a core that are going to roll with that. Yep. Just like there's going to be a core who rolls with Kevin Samuels or some of these others who are out there, and they're going to live there. That's exactly where they are, right? So that's going to happen.
And every now and then you'll see a man pop up in her comments, and then the piranhas tear his ass limb from limb, which is the same thing that would happen in the Kevin Samuels comments. If a woman comes on and it's like, hey, we're not all like that, the piranhas that tear her limb from limb. So it's like these channels, going back to this subject, these channels do thrive. Why? Right? beyond their issues. Why? And now I'm gonna push back on the men a little bit. I
Mhm.
really do think is because men have been fronting for centuries. Men have
Mhm.
been acting like they were stronger than they are, less emotional than they are, okay?
Mhm.
Better communicators than women are, and they're not. They're
Mhm.
not. I think these channels, specifically these gender war channels, have exposed and revealed them to the 10th power. I've seen
Mhm.
men get hysterical, something
Mhm.
I never thought I'd see. Now,
Mhm.
whose fault it is? Frank and I were speaking off camera earlier, and I was saying maybe it's some personal, how they were raised, or their experiences, whatever the reason was why men were suppressing,
Well,
right?
let me speak to that I don't want to interrupt you here, but I want to speak to that.
Okay. So I'm like, I never thought, I always say this. I grew up in a home with a strong, silent type father, not emotional, wasn't into funerals or hospitals. If someone dies, they died. It's life. So my dad had 3 jobs. I went, to one of his jobs with him on the weekend. So that's what I grew up with. And then I grew up in an environment where I'm watching men on television and I'm watching men in the newspaper. And they was all very strong, silent. This is the man and suited, and we run the house. So never ever, if someone would have told me when I was 20 years old, if someone would have told me by the time you hit your 40s, men are going to be hysterical online, I'd be like, no way. Ain't no way. That's not how men are. Not happening. And
Mhm.
boom, here we are, 2021, and men are hysterical online to the point
Mhm.
where I've been taken aback. Where I've gotten into debates with men, and they were more hysterical than me, and they were more feminine than me.
Mhm.
And it's like shocking to me. I'm
Mhm.
always taken aback because looking on the surface, this looks like a big old man, you know what I
Mhm.
mean, who can hold his own in a conversation and communicating. But then it's
Mhm.
like, whoa, are you hysterical right now? Like, are you
Mhm.
yelling? And then it's like, okay, I'll meet him there. I'll start yelling too, but it's icky. I don't
Mhm.
like it.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's icky. So what do you have to
Let
say
me
about
jump in on it. Yeah, so I have a bit of a nuanced point on it. I'm gonna make the first one and kind of pivot quickly to the second one. First point is, I think that generally speaking, the notion of the silent, strong male is something that is a bit promoted by media, and also a bit promoted by
Yeah.
yeah, and a bit promoted by social norms where, in general, historically, the society has called for the man, to be that person that and have fit that stereotypical role, so to speak, where if you have emotions, it's something to strive for, to put away your emotions because you need to be stoic, you need to be logical, you're the provider. Emotions don't serve you well in that way, and so it's a manly characteristic. So that's number one. But then pivoting to, and I can even say as a side, one of my favorite characters is probably my favorite character is Mr. Spock from Star Trek. Who's a logical guy and is very, very stoic. And
And I hear a lot of men refer to Spock when they're
Spock.
talking about their emotions. That's
And see,
interesting.
now here's an interesting point on that. You got to remember Spock being a Vulcan. This is, all, we're talking about a fictional character here. Spock was a character who, remember, did not lack emotions, and even Vulcans as a race, again, fictional stuff here, do not lack emotion. They simply have mastered the ability to control it, to show it. They had them, but they were always underneath. So, the thing that I think is a bit of a mistake to somehow think maybe that men like kind of don't have emotions. But then I want to pivot to the second point, which I think might be a little bit more important, which is, Jen, I think that society has changed on us, while we have been alive. When we were younger, we were being raised more in traditional families that had the mother and the father, and the father, if they had a son, more often, just by sheer numbers, were teaching their sons in these roles that we're talking about. And so in many ways, they were bringing up their sons in this line of thinking. And so therefore, as a consequence, you had more and more sons, that were embracing this and growing up. However,
Mhm.
As you know, modern society now into the 70s, into the 80s, into the 90s, when marriage is taking a nosedive, when more and more women are single parents, and more, as a consequence of not being married, sons are being raised by mothers more than active fathers. Now you have a situation where a natural byproduct is you don't have that masculine instruction nearly as much. And so over time, if you're talking about people who grew up in the 80s, 90s, this is 2021 now, you have grown men who were raised absent that masculine influence. Instead, more of the influence from the mother who has never been really, and it's never been a social norm for women to be masculine and hold back. It's always been a social norm, or at least socially acceptable, for ladies to be emotional. Hey, now you got grown men having been raised by these people, and so here and now we're seeing more and more and more, I think, are men who are tapping into that side. And so because they've never really been focused the way and had that type of leadership from a father figure to enforce that social norm. So it's not surprising to me if we see more and more of the dudes being emotional, having emotional outbursts, and just bottom line, just being more emotional than we ever have in the past.
I don't like it. I don't like it. It worries me. I'm sorry. I have to keep it simple. I don't like it. It worries me. But to your point, women also have been marketed as the emotional ones, right?
Right.
The ones
Right.
that cry at every little thing. We've been marketed the opposite way, which is why now something that rings all the time in the YouTube street is, you're masculine. You're masculine. Well, guess what, buddy? You're feminine. So is it safe to say that men and women have both had those characteristics suppressed? And this is like who I am. This is who you are. For real, for real. And if that's the case, right, then you can't call a woman masculine as an insult. Because if I call you feminine, you're going to think it's insulting. Yet you're acting hysterical like a woman. So you can't have it both ways, men, right? Because when a woman is strong, you're masculine, and they say it like it's a negative. But if you're hysterical with me, I'm gonna call you feminine in nature. So don't be insulted by it. You can't
Right.
have it both ways.
I agree with that. Let's call a spade, and I feel like dudes do that all the time with each other. So you definitely shouldn't be upset if you're displaying that and the lady calls you out. You're being more feminine than me right now, type thing. And
Right.
shout out to Jay Bryant. Definitely, if you, I don't know if he's calling in, but definitely
Yeah,
you
I
don't
just
have to
told him he
cam up.
doesn't have to be yeah, you guys if you guys want to be on camera on the panel, that's fine. And if you don't, that's fine. We accept you as is. We
Yep.
just need some respect. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, let
Yeah.
me
So that's my working theory on that part.
wait, let me let me block this idiot real quick because I don't have the time today, honeys. Get therapy. Get therapy. Call your
Somebody about to
mother,
get blocked
laundry.
right
I
off
don't have
top.
the time. These people need therapy, but they want to come talk to me. It's weird. I'm not a therapist. Goodbye. Have a good evening, sir.
All right.
He's out here.
We got one down. One
Yeah,
down.
All right.
there's no time. Okay, guys. So, gentlemen, Jabari and Mike, Big Time Drum. Good to see you
Yes.
guys here. You know we
Good
love
to
you
see
guys
you.
on. So we've said a mouthful for the
Yes.
men and the women. So please, by all means, Mike, welcome. And what do you have to object to?
Ooh, I have an objection to something you said.
Uh-oh.
My objection is, even though I hear your talking points about, how you see things going with the men's side and all that other stuff, but the question that you posed really has nothing to do with, you know, women energy versus energy. What the real answer here is that it's what the platform has allowed for people to come in and to be able to say, here's what I got to say without the filter. Okay, so give you example, right? Like the reason why Black War, thrives on YouTube, and funny enough, Charlemagne the God said it, best earlier today. He said, um, social media, believe it or not, thrives on the seven deadly sins. Okay, and if you think about that, you'll notice that's why the minute you say something or you have beef or you have war, your numbers, your, algorithm, everything is going to get pushed up. Because why? The age old saying is this: controversy sells, right? So again, it's not really a men or a women issue on YouTube, because that's what we're talking about. It's just with YouTube, YouTube has kind of said, you guys write the story. Now, the only guideline they give you is you can't say the R word, and there's like maybe other three other words that you really can't say. But apart from that, you can go for it. It's not a problem. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So when you're talking about, this person and that person and that person, you have to think to yourself, what are they talking about that's allowing them, or should I say, what is their talking points that has allowed this platform to say, hey, you can say whatever you want, you know? And
Mm-hmm.
even if you might disagree with it, but the point is, it's going to get your attention. I guarantee you that.
Mm-hmm.
You
I
see what
got
I
that.
mean?
Yeah, I'll jump in. Okay, now watch the clock, bro. You see it
Yeah,
right there.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
If
But
you
I
get
had to get it
muted,
out.
don't get mad.
I had to get it out.
No, I'm just messing with you.
I have a
No,
I have a
real quick.
question. No,
I want to.
I just have a question for Mike, but I'm gonna save it, and I want Jabari to give his objection as well. Go ahead, Frank.
No, I was just gonna say, just underlining that point. What it sounds like he's saying
Okay.
is that hey, any war, gender war, whatever, any type of is gonna thrive on YouTube. That's what I sound. That's kind of what I hear you saying, Mike. Go ahead.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so welcome, Jabari. Do you have an objection or something to add or take away?
Welcome,
I think it's
sir.
a bit of both. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the big thing, that my objection to what you were saying, Jen, uh, is that it's new. That is somehow the result of uh, problems that men have with women. The fact is, men always go hard on other men. If you go to those barbershop conversations, men go hard on men. Men, we insult each other on levels that we rarely do with women, and we never did in the past. We always went hard, especially on our friends. Guys went harder on each other than women do, and generally speaking, men can say what we say, even if it's insulting, and dap it up and still be friends. Or you go outside and box it out, and then you still be friends. Whereas with women, what you say tends to linger. Now, in the online spaces, what is new, you have a voice. There's a voice of people who are voiceless. A lot of these people that are showing up on a lot of the shows that have the vitriol were people who sat in front of the TV and would yell at the TV before. Now they have a group around them who amens them online. It's not that they're doing something new, it's just that the hive has kicked in. It's like if you see one bee and you swat that bee away, the bee will leave. But if you have 1,000 bees in the same place, the bees don't run anymore. The bees attack. I think we're dealing with that. And I think another thing that you said about the strong, silent man, I don't think that was, I want to have to push back against, I'm sorry, brother, I don't know your name.
Yeah, Frank.
Uh, Frank, it's more than a myth. There are people like that. My dad was like that. I'm like that. And a lot of my friends are like that. I think that there is an image of males and females that is based on reality. I think it's based on some truth. It's the identification of ourselves that we want to be. It's our best selves a lot of times, and we don't always live up to it. But when you have these hives existing online, the hive always bring out the worst in us. The mob always brings out the worst in the person. And That's the objection that I have to both of you guys. I agree with a lot of what you both said, but those are my objections with both of y'all. And I'm not going to go over my time, so I'm going to let you guys um, address those.
Okay, thank you so much, Jabari. This is what I'm talking about. People objecting. First I want to go back to Mike real quick. Mike, are you? Did I understand correctly? You're saying that these gender wars are thriving, or these wars, or this type of environment because YouTube is allowing it, and that's really the only reason why that's going on. Is that what you were saying?
Yes. Yeah. Think about this, okay? Like, for example, with a lot of the, shall we say, objections, right? If you go on to Facebook, you know, I can guarantee you that probably 70% of what you really want to say will either get censored or will get you kicked off of Facebook.
Mm.
Okay. Versus if you come on to YouTube, pretty much 95% of what you really want to say, you can go ahead and say it unfiltered. Okay.
That's an interesting point.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, think about this, right? Because and I've seen this, you know, on many people who have said, yeah, they first started on Facebook and they had problems with Facebook because of whatever the restrictions and so forth and guidelines that, has been put in place. And they come to YouTube and they're like, man, this is great. I could say exactly what I want and I can build an audience based upon this is just me, you know, like it or not. And, the beauty of YouTube is you get to be you completely unfiltered. Okay. And it's not a matter of, well, the men and the women no, it's just a matter of what platform is going to allow you to be able to say things in an unfiltered fashion. And that's what's, going to start the war. Because if you're going to be filtered, then, clearly the war is only going to start a certain kind of way. You see what I mean?
Yeah, I object.
All right, let me hear it.
I object. It's kind of like saying like, so then you take the onus off of the people that are feeling this way. And what I keep hearing is, hey, this wouldn't be going on. These feelings wouldn't even be happening. These arguments wouldn't even happen if YouTube didn't allow it. That's what it sounds like. That's what it sounds like you're saying to me. Hey, the only reason this is going on is just because YouTube lets you be you. And I think there's a difference between like what Jabari mentioned, like back in the day and now. I didn't see men acting like this outside at the barbershop, wherever. I didn't see them acting this vitriolic towards women. But then Frank also added, I'm taking all you on, but then Frank also added that they didn't have a platform before. Now they have a platform, so to speak. So I have to disagree. I don't think that this is going on just
Well,
because
see,
that
here's
gave
my
life.
here's my objection to what you're saying, right? And this again, you notice I'm being completely genderless in what I'm saying here because it's not a men or women issue, right? Um, Sometimes in life, um, the things that you don't see, it doesn't mean it's not happening. Okay. So just like, the age old saying, you know, um, there are things that happen behind closed doors that you would never know about. Do you agree or disagree?
Well, yeah, of course, there are things that are going on behind closed doors
Well,
nobody
there
knows.
you go. But so that's my point of saying, just because you don't see it, it doesn't mean it's not happening. It's no different than when people say things like, uh, I've never seen my parents arguing. Well, just because you don't see it, it doesn't mean it never happened. The difference is they didn't do it in front of you, but they've done it. So it's the same example, you know what I mean? Same example. And that's why I'm saying, like, for example, right? Now, as an actress, and you've been on TV and film and blah 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 blah, that when you go onto TV, there's only so much that you can do, say, and get away with. right? With YouTube, generally, it's pretty much an unfiltered platform, okay? And because it's unfiltered, I mean, for example, you can cuss, you know? I mean, you can say things that sometimes might go, what the, you know what I mean? But
Okay, so I
that
have to, okay, so
that's the
let
nature
me
of it.
I gotcha. I got your point. So let me jump in here real quick. I still object. I don't agree because yeah, YouTube is a free for all, so to speak, to a certain limit. I can't jump on here and say I'm going to kill somebody tomorrow, right? There's still limits on YouTube, but it
Yeah.
keeps sounding to me like you're saying, well, if YouTube didn't allow this behavior, this wouldn't go on. It would stay behind closed doors. And what I'm trying to say, I think we're missing each other. What I'm trying to say is that it is about genders. It is about wars because men think differently and women think differently.
But
And
that's a given.
when they fail at their relationships, men blame women and women blame men. YouTube aside, I think YouTube is amplifying how men have always felt or have been suppressed about feeling. But I wouldn't blame the platform. Can the platform be better at curbing certain language or whatever? Yeah, of course. But I don't think it's because of YouTube that these men are now behaving this way. I
No,
don't
no,
think.
no. I wasn't saying it's because of YouTube. You know, what I'm saying is YouTube has allowed the voice to be heard in an unfiltered fashion. That's
Well,
the point of me saying that, right? Um, and it's not a matter of the men or the women. It's just here's the platform, and it's unfiltered up to a certain point. You understand? So for example, just to name drop for a second, and this is just to make the point. Like, there's this one woman named Michi X, and Michi is raw as heck, very raw, and sometimes probably more angrier than you can even imagine. You know what I mean?
I've seen her. She's disgusting, actually.
Okay. Now, check this out, right? And I'm gonna name drop another one that you have went to war with. Okay, Donovan Sharp.
He's
Okay,
probably like the male version of the Michi one.
but what I'm saying here is, here you have two people, right? They're both doing the same exact thing. Same exact thing. And the irony behind that is that they actually have people who are cheering them on. And the irony behind it is, the more angrier or the more absurd or whatever that they get, the numbers get bigger.
So let me. All right. So I think we're first of all, I don't disagree with you. Like
Right.
I just think we're talking about two different things. Like
But that's part of the question you have here. So that's what I'm sticking with.
yeah, no, but we're
I
talking
feel like
about
you're kind of going off of the rails from the question.
no, I'm actually staying on gender. You want to go as you want to talk about, well, YouTube is allowing these gender wars. I want to
Right.
talk about the gender wars, why women and men are going at each other. So I'm on topic. You want to take it to, well, if people didn't allow them to do that, then they
Right.
would do that because everybody's been arguing for life. No, I want to talk about specifically what I said. Why do gender wars thrive here, right? In this space, not who's allowing
Right.
it, because this happens on Instagram, this happens on Twitter, this
Right.
happens on Facebook. So why do Black gender wars specifically thrive online and in these spaces? Because we already know social media is going to allow whatever is going to bring them money. But
Right.
why specifically do the gender wars thrive with us, between us? So I'm staying.
But again, it's a matter of I think it's a matter of whose voice you're talking about, because you know let's put it in perspective. The person with, 1 million subscribers, whether it's male or female, that person has a lot of influence. You see what I mean? So, versus a person like me, and I can bring the same exact point and the same exact energy, but I have less subscribers. I'm not going to have the same influence as somebody else.
Okay, I just think we're talking about two different things, because we covered that in another show on objections, mobs, angry mobs, and why people react a certain way to certain personalities online. So I
Yes,
get
but
that, but I'm specifically talking about gender wars, not what
right, and
happens
I'm on the same thing, and I'm on the same thing
No,
because if you
you're
think
talking
about it,
about why does negativity thrive?
right, and
You're
that's
talking
what
about
I'm
why
trying
does
to say.
negativity thrive? I could go
Right.
online and talk about I hate crab cakes, and people
Yeah.
that eat crab cakes are garbage, and people that eat crab, that's going to
Yeah.
thrive because I'm being
Yeah.
negative. So you're talking about why negativity thrives. I'm talking about gender wars specifically. Why do men and women go at each other online? That's different from negativity thriving for any little thing. Like I could go on and
Right. And
start a
that's
war right now. I could
yeah.
start a war right now, Apple versus Samsung. And I'm
Right.
gonna have 5,000 people in the comments, and they're gonna be going at each other as to why. So I know negativity thrives. I'm specifically talking about gender wars. Why men say they hate women, why women say they hate men. This is where I am. But I understand what you're saying. I don't disagree with what you're saying. I just
Right.
think that's not the topic right now.
Well, again, it's I mean what you're talking about, I think it's more about all right. So to go back on the point that you said, which is both men and women, we think differently. That's going to be a given. So obviously, as far as answering that question, why is that? Because we think differently. That's the simple answer. There's no getting around it. You know what I mean? How you see things and how I see things are going to be completely different at times. And just like how earlier you said one statement, I object to it, and I presented my objections, and I said a statement, and you presented your objections because you're seeing it completely different. And there's the answer.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Mike. So I want to pivot to Jabari real quick. He did say I don't think it's exclusive to blacks. It is not. That is not what we're saying here. Specifically, let me read the question again. Why do black gender war channels thrive on YouTube? Right. Let me explain it again because I explained it in the beginning, but you guys probably weren't here in the beginning. What I'm specifically talking about is there are a myriad of YouTube channels led by black hosts on YouTube, and they've been on for many years. Everything from technology, okay, to relationships, okay, to fashion. I'm talking about thousands. Makeup, right? But Kevin Samuels swooped in, and in a matter of months, gained 1 million followers, right? With, as Mike says, negativity because he was attacking women. Now, we could debate all day whether or not Kevin Samuels attacks women, but he was specifically rating women, telling women they had too high expectations, they didn't deserve high value men. Some people would look at that as an attack on women, okay? He thrived. He went past a lot of black channels that have been on for years and years and years. So that begs the question again, why do black gender war channels thrive on YouTube, right? So it's not just black people, but Jabari, I wanted you to specifically, and I don't know if we could go back to your earlier point, but you did say white guys are going super hard in this gender war, and then you mentioned Tommy Lahren. Can you elaborate on that, please? Because I don't want this to be like, oh, it's just, black people. If you have information, please share. We can't hear you, Jabari. Are you muted?
I don't think he's on.
Did he just? Oh, he might have dropped off.
He's still.
Is he here?
No, I don't see him. Oh,
Hold on.
now he's here.
Can you
Hey,
guys hear me?
Jabari.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Got you.
Okay.
Question?
Yeah, I'm not sure what happened. No, my point was to say that it's a symptom of the greater divide. It's not just the black thing. That was my point, which was a lead in into, I think that the reason why, and this is unpopular, but it is true. I think the reason why the gender wars are thriving at this time is because we're saying things to each other that we only said to our peers, and we don't like what we hear. I think that's the biggest thing. I think that I think men are saying things to women that we didn't used to say to women. What Kevin Samuel says is what a lot of men say about women. You're too old to think you're going to get that guy. You're too fat to think you're going to get that guy. And that's not popular. The It is okay in pop culture for a woman to say, I don't like that guy because he's fat. Or I don't like, or an even more popular one, that guy's too short. No matter, unless you're Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, you've probably heard that at least once in your life. If you're a guy, that guy's too short.
You don't have
It's
to be
socially acceptable. It's socially acceptable, though. It's true. It's socially acceptable. I think the issue is that now men are saying things to women that women aren't used to hearing from men, and a lot of that is brutal. I mean, it is brutal honesty. I mean, guys tell, I've heard friends. Hell, I've said it. I'm not going to lie. She is too old and too ugly to think that she's going to get all of those things that she's listing from guys. And I consider myself a gentleman. I would never tell a woman that, but I've started in my head several times. That woman is too ugly to think that she can just walk in here and talk to everybody like she's God's gift. I think women are hearing us say the things that we've only said to each other, and it's ugly. And by the same regard, women are saying things to men that they're saying things to men directly that they've only been able to say through TV shows or through music. I think we're saying things to each other, and I think it goes to the filters are off. And the biggest filter, and I don't want to run through my time, but the biggest filter is politeness. There's no reason to be polite. There's no reason to be a gentleman or a lady. You say what you say, and it's my truth. It's what I want. And if the person doesn't like it, you can just log off or block them. Whereas in life, you got to keep dealing with people. That's what it is.
That's
a great point, right?
Yeah, I
Can I
definitely
just
would jump
piggyback
in
off of
whenever I
one point
can.
he just said?
No, well, hang on, because you've been going back and forth with Jen for a minute there.
That's
I
why
ain't
it's
said nothing
objections.
in a minute, and I'm one of the hosts, so you got so you get straight. But I definitely want to. Well, Jen, if you want to say something real quick, but I want to jump in on this.
No, please go ahead because you've been quiet, Frank.
Thank you. So number one, I think that Jabari is spitting facts, and I definitely appreciate the perspective that you're bringing, Jabari, in terms of this notion that we are now speaking directly to each other and saying things that we in the past did not. And that from the fella side, it can be brutal for a woman to hear these things. And I think a lot of times when we say these things directly to women in general, or let's say, we're on a YouTube space and we're going back and forth about it, that it feels like an attack to them, when for us, we're not necessarily, I know me, for example, I'm not necessarily saying it to attack women, but because it feels like an attack to them, then boom, now you're gonna get it back. Case in point, very specific example, something that hadn't been brought up just yet, but I mentioned in another chat. I personally, this is how I feel. I feel like too many ladies these days have their game wrapped up, and I'm talking about this, the sexual marketplace value, whatever, their game wrapped up into this makeup thing. They have gotten extremely comfortable with putting their faces completely on, going out into the marketplace, and then judging dudes, in terms of whether or not they're going to be attracted to them. I'm gonna holler at them. And dudes, we don't have this little makeup thing going on. Like, I'm talking about the majority. We got to come out here exactly how we look. And so there's this thing going on where, okay, hold on, you're not even looking like how you look. And if I say something like, listen, you talk to me when you take all your makeup off. If we're out here and all this, and we're gonna be, going back and forth, and you're gonna judge whether or not I look a certain way or whatever, or dudes in general. All right, say something when all the makeup comes off. That sounds like an attack to women, because they're so used to having that little thing going on with the makeup game. And so, being, so that's kind of one thing of a real part of having a real frank and honest conversation. and it's something that I think is kind of rooted in the truth. You know, how many ladies these days look like the ladies in the early 90s or 80s where makeup was not like it where it was before. So I just kind of want to underscore what Jabari is saying. I think he's spitting facts.
Okay, but Frank, I object.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-oh.
Here's why. If a woman says to men, you're too short or whatever, or she tells her girlfriends he's too short or whatever, that's brutal honesty as well, right?
Correct.
So
Correct.
if men want to be brutally honest, it's a thing where if you can dish it, you
But
have
then
to
it's always been that way. That's the difference.
Right.
Women
That's
have
the difference.
always been able to do that. The difference is now men are saying things to women in the same way that women have said it to men for years. You know, that's the difference. And men, I don't want you to think that men don't go hard on each other, because the same way that we speak truth to women and women are being offended today, men tell their friends all the time, sit your skinny ass, I don't know if you can use cuss words on here, but sit your skinny self down. Boy, you know you can't make that, especially on the basketball court or on the football field. Boy, Brad, you got ran over last week. What you talking about? Sit down and shut up. We've always gone, that's what I started with. We've always gone hard on each other and treated women with kid gloves. Now, women are getting it the way we give it to each other. And it gives, and it's hard. It's a tough pill for women to swallow, because, like you just said, guys you think about how your brothers or your uncles talk to you compared to how guys on the street or guys that you know talk to you, Jen. And it's not the same. And you know it's not the same.
Okay, so I'll say this to that. Every time I hear that, because I hear men say that a lot. That is the rebut. We've never been able. Now we can say it. We're free. The chains are off. I hear that a lot. I hear that echoed a lot.
To be fair, now that's not what he's saying exactly. But go ahead.
Not.
What is he saying?
Being a little bit more specific. What he's saying is not that we're liberated to say these things. It's that men are saying these things now. They've always been saying these things to each other, and the ladies are reacting. It's not a we can, it's this is what's happening, and this is the pushback that we're getting from the ladies.
Well, that sounds like what I said. Now you have the freedom to do it. You feel like, right?
No,
now you feel like, hey, I can say this now.
I don't want to quibble. Go ahead. Let's see what you got.
All right, so what I'm saying is I call BS. And I call BS because let's look at Facebook, okay? The inception, the conception. The reason why Zuckerberg made Facebook was to rate women, okay? A lot of people don't know that. They think it was a place for friends and family. It was invented.
It was both genders.
To rate, right?
Right.
Invented by a man.
That's an important distinction, Jen.
It is.
Yes,
it really is.
No, but it was invented by a man first, informed, not by a woman. He didn't consult a woman. Okay, right. He didn't make the deal with a woman. Hey, let's do a site where we can rate each other, because I think women are ugly and you think men are short. Let's do this together. Okay.
Right.
It was patriarchal in nature.
With that again.
So I'm gonna put something out so we can rate what people look like. That was a man's idea. That was a man's idea.
So you're saying that women wouldn't come up with that idea?
I was about to say, Jen, we're all old enough to remember the slam book.
Listen,
all of us are old enough to remember a slam book.
You can respond.
Yeah,
let
Jen go.
Okay.
Because that's what I'm doing with y'all.
Yeah.
Listen. Okay. So my point was, when I hear, it sounds to me like men are denying that they have always criticized a woman's look. That's what it sounds like to me.
No.
But I've heard men say, she fat, she got a gut, she's short, she bald-headed, she too skinny, don't nobody like a meat,
real talk,
like a bone but a dog. So men have always criticized women.
Let me give you a quick adjustment. I'm not gonna go into diatribe because I want to hear what you're saying. Jen, that's not, I think you're not hearing what he's saying. Men have always thought these things and said these things. Men have never had these kinds of direct conversations to women. They used to say these things to each other all the time, absolutely. But in the 90s, you didn't have groups of men going up to the ladies and saying, you're this, you're that, you the makeup game.
So then y'all needed backup, because we all went to school. And in the schoolyard, men used to roast women and girls all the time. Let's not
But
play.
women
Men
also
roasted
used to
women
roast,
at parties.
did the same thing.
No,
Women at
I'm
parties.
no,
sorry.
Jen, no,
I object. I
no, Jen.
object.
Nice try, but no,
Exactly.
no. Nice try,
Listen,
but
when I was
no,
in high
but
school, check
no.
this out. Real talk.
All
When I
right,
was in
who
high
first? Who
school,
first? So I
okay,
can put the timer. Who first? Barbie,
I'll
let
take
me
it. I'll
Barbie.
take
Give
it.
give Mike the floor
I'll
because
take
he
it.
hasn't.
Okay. All
I'll
right.
Yeah.
Wait,
take it.
wait, 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 wait. Espérate, espérate, espérate.
Ah, see. Aranza. Anyways,
All right, now
so
Mike, you about to get the timer now. Come on, you
Yeah, go
got to
ahead,
pay
go ahead.
I
attention to
got
the
it. I got
timer.
it.
All right.
All right. So I just wanted to piggyback off of something, right? Which is when Jay Bryant was talking about Kevin Samuels. Okay. First of all,
I didn't
Kevin
call
Sam,
names.
huh?
I didn't call names, but go ahead.
No. But check out my point, right? The thing with Kevin Samuels is if you look at how he does things, is he lets the women basically tell on themselves. All right. And he's just piggybacking off of what they're saying. And because a lot of the times when they tell on themselves, it's like a whoa, what did you just say? You know what I mean? So, so that's why his platform is so big. Now, getting back to you, Jen, now we're both old enough to know way back, you know, uh, when we were in high school, there were things that the girls would say to each other, that they definitely wouldn't say to the guys, and so forth and so forth, because I think back then there was a certain, shall we say, value and moral compass that we had back then, that we had a little bit more respect in terms of, okay, there's certain things we just don't say to you, right? um Versus today, the only difference is that a lot of what you see going on, especially on the YouTube streets, a lot of these people are just saying things that I can guarantee you probably be a larger percentage of the people would never say that to the same person in person. Hell to the no. Heck to the no.
Uh,
So, so YouTube is
Okay.
the
we done
safe,
lost the
it's the
clock.
Okay.
safest space
Okay.
to say
Let
that.
me say this. I'm gonna say this. I really want you guys to stay on because I am going to up the ante a little bit, right?
All
And
right.
people are gonna be offended, right? But that's okay because after this, you're gonna go do laundry. So, is it a very specific demographic? Let me clarify. Is it a very specific demographic that is indulging in these channels and these points of views? Let me be specific, right? There are women that would look like myself, would look at a Cynthia G and realize that she's entertainment. She's right sometimes, but I feel like I am above all that toxicity. I've had bad relationships, but it's not enough for me to sit and watch a woman for 3 hours bash men. It's just not. I'm not there. I feel like I can communicate with people. If I feel like something is negative in my life, I'm going to leave it. So, isn't kind of like what I would say people that are lower human life forms that entertain these things, people that don't know how to communicate, people that don't take accountability, people that are bitter, people that have unresolved issues, men and women. Because I asked the average man who Kevin Samuels is, they have no damn idea. And then when I explain who Kevin Samuels is, it's like, why the hell would I want to listen to that shit? I don't have problem getting women. What the fuck is that about? Right? So do you a certain demographic of people that entertain these characters online because they have unresolved issues and these people speak to them? Because I think it is, but you guys can object.
But that's what you're saying is more than obvious, because for example, in my age and in your age, there are definitely things that we don't feel is either A, entertainment value, or B, it serves our purpose, or C, it feeds our knowledge, right?
Mhm.
So yes, that's more than obvious. Whereas, if you're, in your 20s and things like that, I mean, you get entertained by that stuff, especially the sensationalism and all that stuff, very fast. Very fast. Yeah.
Jabari, what's up? Can
I
we go
think
to
the people.
Jabari?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the people that get triggered, I don't think necessarily the people, and this is where I have a slight objection, Jen. Case in point, shall we say? Uh, I don't think that the people who watch it necessarily. I think the people who get triggered. I think the people who the hive. Like I said earlier, one of my earlier comments, people feel these are people who come in with their own pains, with their own, and they're online seeking the validation of their mindset right now. They're seeking the validation of their what they feel. And a lot of these men are operating out of feelings of hurt, feelings of shame, feelings of whatever, rather than being logical, which is again our better selves. So you're going to seek that out. And when you get to the hive makes the bees more active. And I really think that it's not a question of them being dumber or a lesser human being or anything like that. I think it's much more an issue of they're seeking people who are in their hive. And when they find it, I think they embrace it. But when they're confronted with their own whatever problems, I think they respond the way a bee does when he's disturbed and he's in the hive.
Okay, so everybody hold on to your seats because lightning's about to strike. I will concede, Jabari. I will concede. With that said, I do feel that they're a little lower on the totem pole than Save It.
Yeah, I agree with that one.
Just a little bit. And, you know, I'm not the alpha nor the omega. It takes work to get here. But I do see, like I said, I love that point that you made, Jabari, because you're right. It's not just the people that watch. It's the people that get triggered. Like, I'm not triggered by Kevin. I'm not triggered by Cynthia. And it's funny to me that even when I have an opinion on Kevin, men attack me as if I'm triggered. And I'm like, dude, it's just an observation. I don't hate Kevin Samuels. I think he's funny. I said that for the 100th time. You know what I mean? But it's like, no, because I'm like, relax. I'm not, you know, like they're triggered by even the slightest opinion. But going back to the hive, we've seen that with Beyonce. Even if somebody doesn't like her outfit, people get triggered by that. How dare you not like her outfit? So you're right in how you describe these people, because I'm like, people do get triggered badly.
I feel like Jabari is spitting facts again. Jabari, do you have a YouTube channel? I'm just wondering.
No, I don't.
Bro, you spitting facts. I think you should consider it. Just, you know, I don't know if that's in your plans at any point, but you spit a lot of facts, and I like the way that you sum things up. I also like the way that Brother Mike brought up a particular point about Kevin Samuels and how he from my perspective, you know, and I feel like it's accurate. He'll speak to the guests, they'll call in, and then they'll say something, you know, through conversation, they will say something that really does put themselves sort of in a bind. Of case in point, recent example, he just had someone on the other day, and he was asking the person about trying to kind of pin them down on whether or not that young lady would choose to be with someone, settle down with someone who's making the average amount for Black men in this country, which is roughly 42,000. He asked it a couple ways, she dodged it a couple ways, and then finally, by way of clarification, she asked him back, so do you mean, you know, it wasn't even a question, so you want me to be with somebody broke? And it immediately, of course, the association being that in her eyes, in her point of view, that, hey, someone average earning person is actually broke to her. And that type of thing is exactly the kind of thing that happens. You know, Kevin Samuels ain't gonna react positively, you know, positively to that if that is coming from someone. He's gonna definitely put that out on Front Street and make that person understand in his way how really messed up that is, to think that the average person, average Black person, is broke if they're making, you know, roughly $42,000, you know, in the way that they do. So I just felt like that was a good point that Mike.
But Frank, we can't deny that that's his gimmick and his brand, because that person could on a
But
positive person's page and be like, do you know that that means, earning not enough or earning more? And they could explain it differently. But Kevin Samuels
real
is bad or wrong. He makes opinions bad or wrong, and then he weaponizes your opinions against you because that's the entertainment factor. But that
okay.
person could have been talking to a therapist and they could have explained it in a different way.
Okay, so if gimmick, however you want to put it, that's cool. But I feel like, me personally, that is a truth. That is a problem if you feel like the average earning person is broke if they're making 41, 42K. That's the average. That's what people, the average black man actually earns in the country. So if you feel like that's broke, then I don't see, not saying that it's appropriate every time, but shame used to be like an actual thing that was legit, shaming someone if they are off on something. And in this current age that we're looking at, it's like people want to take shame off the table. It's not always appropriate, but sometimes shame is absolutely appropriate. And so if he decides to shame her publicly for expressing a public thing like that, a point of view, a thought, and there's some other things that she did to do that, then that's not, to me, necessarily wrong in a situation.
But then you can't, then again, if you can dish, you can take. Then it's okay for me to shame you for making $40,000 and being a man that's 45 and 50. If all is fair in love and war, if it's okay for him to shame her, then it's okay for women to shame men. But then we're back in the gender wars, aren't we? Because there's no respect, there's no code. Everybody can shame everybody.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that shame is always appropriate. I'm just saying that people want to take shame off the table.
Necessary for him to do that to her.
I'm saying that it's not necessarily wrong that he did it to her. I would have to go back and really dive into the whole situation. I'm just saying that shame is a tool that can be in the toolbox. It needs to be there just like everything else. But if she gets shamed for saying something like that, what happens is it's the immediate reaction, knee jerk from the ladies is, oh, no, who are you shamed? Boom. Let me, instead of determining, whoa, wait a minute, that might have been the right way to go in this situation. It doesn't need to be knee jerk.
May I jump in, please?
Jabari.
Yes, just a brief comment. It won't even. I think that to go back to piggyback and to reference an earlier comment, it's hearing that directly that is the issue. I think what causes the toxicity is hearing that directness from someone. And I think that's what triggers people. I think that's what's funny to some people. And that's what triggers other people. But however, it's having that attitude if you're obese and older that gets the guys on Kevin Samuels' page riled up. And I don't like to call his name. I don't have a problem with Kevin Samuels at all, to be perfectly honest. I don't always watch his show. I don't listen in to anything really regularly but I know who he is. And I've heard my sister, ironically, sends me a lot of Kevin Samuel clips because she finds it entertaining. She just thinks it's funny. But you'll have a person who's overweight. So the same way that guy isn't handling his business and he's only making average pay, you're obese. So you're not handling your business with your health. And I think that's the irony that triggers that gets ignored by one side, the ladies, and gets pounced upon by the guys. It's not that the guys are saying, oh, that guy shouldn't be ostracized for the 40K. It's the point that you're morbidly obese and you're pouncing on somebody about something as well. I think that's the issue in that regard.
I can relate to that because I've seen people, again, before Kevin Samuels' fame. And I love that you said that you don't have any gripe or anything against Kevin Samuels, because when I say that, men don't believe me because I have an opinion on him. I can't possibly not be interested in his videos without hating him or being angry that he's always right. I'm like, no, he's entertaining, just like Cynthia G. I just don't have, I'm not there. I'm not broke or bitter or angry or mad at my past relationships. So I'm only gonna find them entertaining, but so far, like any other entertainment, right? Sometimes I'm in the mood for Lady Gaga, sometimes I'm in the mood for Beyonce, but I can't listen to an entire album, right? But if you don't worship every single word, then you're looked upon like, oh, you must. And I'm like, no, it's not that fucking serious. But I can relate to what you said, because I said on another show, it's always the men that are out of shape talking about women's bodies. It's never the guy that looks like The Rock or Jason Momoa or the bodybuilder. There's always some dude whose belt is leaving an imprint on his gut talking about what women look
And
like.
it's always the ladies whose face are caked on.
Right?
It's always the ladies whose face are caked
So
on talking about the short dude.
Again, it confirms that it's two people that are broken and not good enough for, honestly, they're equally yoked. So why they fight so hard, why this gender war goes on, I have no idea. Because the chick that's overweight, that wants the guy, that doesn't want the guy that makes $40,000, matches with him. The guy that makes $40,000 and wants the pretty girl matches with the fat one.
Right.
So they're equally yoked, if you ask me. I couldn't play there.
Here's
Can we
the
be
thing,
honest,
though.
though?
On one
Can we-
side,
But
one
they're
side is
equally yoked to a
delusional.
point, though. To a point.
Well, no.
One
It's
side is
a point.
delusional.
everybody thinks they deserve.
Who wants to talk? Because Bolo TV is on and he's been patient. So who wants to talk so I can set up
No.
the
Go ahead. I
Go
apologize.
ahead, Bolo.
Go ahead.
You can throw Bola up.
Okay. Everybody simmer down. Bolo's here and I really want to get him on.
Good afternoon.
Right.
Well, good evening, everyone.
Good
Good
evening.
evening.
How you
How
doing,
are you?
Bolo?
Good to see you.
But thank you so much for allowing me on the show. Thank you again for your hospitality. I said the word wrong, but you know the point.
Hospitality. Go ahead, bro. Go ahead.
I'm tired, so thank you. I think one of the key components that we're missing is the village, right? Because when we had the village and there was some type of shaming, right? Because shaming is a tool, like my man said, that we need. It wasn't taken as an attack. It was taken as a tool of, damn, I messed up, or this is what I need to grow on, or this is something that I need to get better. But because there isn't that village, because that truth, because shaming is truth, right? So if you're talking about me being overweight and I'm talking smack and you shame me, it's truth. So truth given without love is a weapon. And I think that's what we're talking about. And I think that's the circle that we're in, that you have a setup where there is no love, there is no camaraderie, there is no place of safety, so that when I do say, your breath stink, you're not going to take it as an attack. You're going to take it like, damn, thank you, Bolo. Thank you for letting me know. And I think that's where it goes. It's given cold. It's not given in an aspect of someone that needs to grow. It's given as here. And I think that's one of the main problems that we have in society today. There is no camaraderie. There is no love in most places. That's it.
Very succinct. Very succinct.
Okay, who was back there chirping and beefing? Who was it? Who wants next?
I'm gonna chill. I'm gonna give it to the guests on this one.
I don't have a problem jumping in. I don't disagree. I agree with what the brother just said. The need to. I've been saying constantly we need to turn down the temperature across the board, beyond just relationships, but across the board we need to turn down the temperature. The vitriol is in large part the result of a societal shift, and we're in a community that already had issues with respect within the community. So when you up the ante across the board, and you already have a group of people who are on 1,000, I think it looks worse, and it seems worse. I think I don't think people can take criticism anymore. I don't think people can take correction anymore. Nobody, you see somebody, nobody wants anybody to say anything to their kids, even when their kids are wrong. Nobody wants to be chastised, even when they're wrong. Everything is someone else's fault. Nothing is me. I think that's what we're seeing is the logical outcome of a series of decisions as a society and as a community that we're making, and it's starting to boil over. I'll leave it at that because I'll get a little too deep in the rabbit hole. But I think that's the central answer to the question of the day. I feel like we've gone too far down the rabbit hole that society has been pushing us down anyway. And I think that's where we are, and it's really not slowing down, it's speeding up.
I think Mike, maybe.
Thank
Is
you,
that
Japan. Did you have
Yeah,
something?
the only thing I can say to what he's saying is, imagine um, that we can't even give a compliment, you know, and the reason why we can't even give a compliment goes back to what he's saying is the sensitivity value has just gone through the roof, and a lot of it is just unnecessary, to be honest. um, and that's why, for example, with Dave Chappelle is getting a lot of pushback. But what I find interesting in the pushback is that a lot of the uh, a lot of what he said, concerning the transgender community, he actually was complimenting, the transgender community, and the fact that he was talking about it already, they got triggered, but they missed the whole point. They missed the whole point. And I'm like, wow, how do you miss the fact that this man is telling you a story about someone who's a fan? Not only this person was a fan, but this person wanted to be like him. He gave the person a shot. The person got up there. He said, man, this person sucked. But you know what? I was willing to mentor that person. And, you know, and unfortunately, the person ended up passing away. And because they passed away, this person had a daughter. And because this person had a daughter, the human side of me said, I'm going to give something back to that. So where's the flowers for that whole story? But instead, there's more pushback. You see?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
and I want to clarify that's a certain demographic of the LGBTQ community. It's definitely not all of them. I have friends in that community, and they think some of these people are bugging. You know what I mean? Trying to cancel Dave Chappelle. Patrice, OG Patrice, has joined us. I hope you've been listening, lady, because a lot has been thrown around. They're trying to get me, Patrice.
You know what I was getting ready to say is Jen, the only female y'all mean to tell me y'all coming on my girl Jen like this?
Hey, that's payback from what happened on my channel last time.
I guess touche. How's everybody doing?
Doing good.
Everything is everything.
Yes, Patrice, what do you have on this subject? It's going every which way, but please join us.
Oh God, listen, thank you for having me. I've been listening to I guess I've been in here about 10 minutes now, so I'm probably gonna have to rewind and go back and replay the earlier conversation. But from what I've been hearing, yeah, I know for me, I'm just speaking on a general perspective. I think we are absolutely living in a very sensitive climate right now. And the reason why I'm thinking I see a lot of the Black gender wars in the YouTube streets is because I think, and when I really analyze it, I think I see a lot of self hate going on, and I think that it's very easy to reflect that on someone else, right? I think that I see a lot of discord that happens when you can generally, like the gentleman just spoke before me. Is that Big Time Jerome? Who's that?
That's right.
Okay. And you can take that concept of what the story that Dave Chappelle told about his transgender friend, but it's going to always be somebody that's not going to get that whole beautiful story. They're going to take one thing that was said that they're very sensitive to, and then they're going to take that only, and they're going to blow that up and blow that out of proportion instead of looking at the whole generalization of what he was saying in that story. Jen, I said this on somebody else's platform the other day, but I see why now you have your little sign that says some, not all. Some, not all, because I'm telling you, if you make a statement, I made a statement and just said black men, and it got taken way out of context. I came up and it was like, oh my God. So now I have to be clear, like, because people are literally thinking you're generally talking about every black man or every black woman just because you don't say all. It's just so, yeah. And it causes a lot of discord. But that's just my opinion on why I think our black community really needs a healing. I think it's a lot of hurt people. I think it's a lot of angry people. I think it's a lot of jaded people. And I think it's a lot of people that have hate, and they self-inflict that on other people.
Thank you, Patrice. I love that point because it's something that we haven't touched on yet. We talk about people being bitter about their experiences, but we haven't touched on there is a lot of self-hate, because I think a lot of us could see the projection in the comments and in the retorts. It's like, wait a minute, whoa, you're really angry. And then if you don't say the not all and the some, like Patrice said, it turns into a verbal fisticuffs. Like, you have to be very specific because people are so sensitive now, where if I say, listen, Puerto Rican women, blah, 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 wait a minute, not all of it. I'm like, well, I didn't mean, do I really have to say not all and some? And that's why I sarcastically made this sign, because this is very comforting to people for some reason. Back in the day, if you said something about Puerto Rican women and it didn't apply to me, you know, I'm a duck. It rolls off my back because you're not talking to me or about me. But now it's like you have to like coddle adults and specify, I didn't mean everybody. I didn't mean you. So we're getting more and more sensitive as time goes on. It's fucking annoying.
I do. And I want to underline something that OG Patrice said also, very astute observation. And thank you for making sort of a correlation here with what we just saw with the special, the Dave Chappelle special, and what he mentioned about the LGBTQ plus community, where again, you know, they latched on, and we saw it. You know, anybody who saw the full special, generally speaking, understood the whole context. But then if you hear one little part that you are not feeling, or you know, you take it out of context, you're not listening to the rest, you're not even listening to something that Jen's kind of mentioned, you're not listening to understand, you're listening to respond. Maybe it triggered, maybe that one little part triggers you, and then it's like nothing else at all was said, and they are only focusing on that. I think we all have been in that situation. And so it makes these kinds of conversations perilous, you know, the black men, black women conversations. And it helps create the drama that thrives on YouTube, the way that Mike is talking about, because the drama sells, and it appeals to something in our nature that most people do. If we get triggered on one little thing, boom, and now we're trading triggers, right? We're trading triggers. So, you know, this side says something that triggers, then the other side in response says something that triggers, and now we triggering back and forth. And this is like a Palestine-Israeli, you know, 50-year war that goes on, where something is.
And be careful, Frank, because that trigger word triggers me. That trigger word triggers me.
Okay. Everybody's triggers are their freaking responsibility. Everybody's triggers are their responsibility. I always say getting offended is a choice. I'm going to say whatever I want to say, and then it's your choice to be offended, vice versa. People are like, well, what if I said this about women? Or what if I said this about Latin women? It is my choice to decide whether or not you are important enough in my life for your words to affect me. It is my choice to be offended. There's a lot of people in the room. I hope y'all hitting that like or unlike and subscribing and notification bell, por favor. This is Objections with On the Block with Jen and Talk with Frank Goodin. So please, guys, support. We ain't asking you for no money unless you got some. So hit the subscribe and the notification bell. So definitely the word trigger now, it's like it's beyond, you know, it's beyond something that make sense anymore, because now everything triggers everybody. And going back to what Frank said, there are a couple of things that Chappelle said, in that special that I didn't like. Not the LGBTQ subject, but the stuff about pedophilia and child molestation. He finds a way to make that funny. I don't think that's ever funny. I don't think that could be made funny. But I don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? Because it's unrealistic to think that I'm going to talk for an hour and you're going to agree with me for an hour. It's impossible. It's impossible, right? And if you
Right.
did, I don't need that type of, fandom, because those people are weird and it turns into other things later. But it's like, why do we have to throw people away? And going back to the gender wars, a couple of people commenting, a couple of people trying to, get their little digs in, like Frank. Well, what about women? They wear all that makeup, blah, blah, blah. Then I can
Take
go back
them.
to men. Why are y'all lying when you're posing with cars that you rented that you don't own? And it'll just go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth forever, right? So what can we do? Is there any resolve that we could do as individuals? Because we know we can't control the masses. But before we're out of here, can we share, like, what can we do?
Well, we
May
need
I?
to we need to
I'm
stop
sorry.
listening. Sorry, brother. We need to
No,
stop.
go ahead.
We need to stop listening with emotional hearts and start listening with logistical ears and start hearing each other. I think that when we're talking about men, men are hurting, so they move in that space. Same as women. Women are hurting, so they move in that space. So the onus is on that person to actually do the work to find out, love starts with you first before it goes out to anyone else. That's why the good book says, love your brother as you love thyself. Starts with you, right? So once you learn what your focus is and you understand what your intentions are and what your direction is, and you know what your worth is, you can go out there and get your value. So now you have standards. So now that core group that you have around you, when they do give you constructive criticism, it isn't about hurting, it's about growth. And we all know that growth is not comfortable. So when we have a society where everyone is being separated and no one is having that symbiotic relationship where they're talking and they're conversing and hugging and touching and just saying hello and being cordial with each other, anything you say is going to be taken out of context. So now I have to talk to you in ABC form when I should be able to talk to you in general, because that's, as humans, that's how we talk. We talk in general. But in some situations, like you said, Jen, people get really offended and people get caught up in the situation. We need to stop listening with emotional hearts and start understanding what's being said. Is this thing that they're saying to me, is it true? And that's the problem. The problem is we're not looking for truth. The problem is we're looking for comfort. The problem is we're not trying to grow. The problem is sometimes, well, most times, we mistake movement for progress when it's not.
Mm. Okay, let me. I got, here we go. You're gonna make me start snapping again. This is a perfect example. I'm gonna address this, and I want to go back to whoever else wants to talk about resolve, if there is any. Snuggles 668 said, but all of a sudden, women are coming out with the some, not all, when they are the ones who started the some, not all. And I don't think men even realize what just happened. The irony. So even with that comment, I have to say it was some women, not all, right? The some, not all is like, it's never ending, right? So because we can say, yeah, but men used to some, not all. And we can say, yeah, but women have always been some, not all, right? Because I've never generalized saying men are broke, men are fat, men. And now if you're coming in my space and wanting to date me and want to hear the truth, then I'm going to tell you, right, as an individual. I've never been anywhere on any platform saying, oh, men are blah, 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 all women are blah, blah. So yeah, we have to use the some, not all. I think especially now with all this sensitivity. And I use it sarcastically because I'm not going to coddle you. If you're an adult, I'm not going to coddle you, but I'll use it if it makes you feel better, right? So who else can talk about resolve?
I can
May
talk
I?
about it.
May I? Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. One word comes to mind as far as the resolve is respect for each other. Um, you know, Jen, you have your perception. Frank, you have your perception. Patrice, everybody on the panel has their perceptions. But at the end of the day, just like how, I sat and I listened to, your points, your talking points, and hence the name Objections, even though there were times where I objected. But the largest part is I respect what you're saying. You see what I mean? And if we can have more of that, then I think that would lessen um, the issues that seems to be um, growing more in terms of the sensitivity being turned up, more so than ever. Um, and also, too, another key thing that I think would be helpful is to listen a little bit more than to try to talk a little bit more. Because sometimes when you don't listen enough, you could be missing the whole thing. Because sometimes somebody might be saying something, and even if they say something and, within 3 words, you're triggered, those 3 words is not the exact point. You have to listen to the whole thing, you see? And
Mhm.
then once you've listened to the whole thing, you can go, oh, okay, now I get it. So now, going back to what you're saying, Jen, now you don't have to say some but all because they listen to what you have to say. Even if they disagreed, they can respect what you're saying.
Okay,
That's
that's
my
a that's a
position.
that's an absolute great point because I think we've all been guilty of that some point or another where we hear the first couple of words and we're like, "Hey, wait a minute, wait!" And I'm like, "Listen," and that's something I had to learn. That did not come overnight, and I'm still practicing it because I was that type of person where I'd be like, "Wait, wait, wait, women, what?" You know what I mean? That's why I stress out. Let me finish my point at least, and then see if you agree or disagree. But let me finish my point first, which I think is something that we have to practice. Who wants to talk about resolve next?
May I? I didn't want to interrupt. Uh,
Yeah, please.
um, the first thing I'd like to say is being offended is no longer just a personal choice because we live in the hive era and people choose to take offense for other people and then the hive swarms. So I think we need to acknowledge that that the world is kind of different and it's changed. And that's the same thing with comedy. Comedy has changed. The era of the comedian who makes a point, makes an ironic point about something by making fun of it is gone. You can't. I'm a huge comedy fan, and you can't. A Richard Pryor or Eddie Murphy or the Rat Pack would never ever be able to do what they've done. The roast from the Red Foxes, those guys that never would have happened. They never would happen today. We have to acknowledge that. But to the solution, I think the biggest thing in terms of solution is personal accountability. I think a lot of what I think we all wish that it was about people loving each other more. I think we all wish that it would be about people treating each other better, but people don't take accountability for themselves. And until people can say what I did was wrong, you're never going to be able to acknowledge someone else in their attempts to help or correct you. Until you're willing to acknowledge your role in whatever situation, the situation will never change. And I think that what's being the same people who are perpetrating this farce that you have a right to be offended for someone else. You have a right to take on someone's offense that they might not even be offended by, are the same people that have the hardest time accepting accountability for their own actions. So I feel like personal accountability is the first thing we have to do if we want to turn down the temperature or make things better.
Thank you, Jabari. I love that point. Something that happened to me earlier reminded me of what you just said. Because we were talking about Jay-Z on Instagram, and this guy kept insisting, like, oh, because of my opinion, he was like, you don't like Jay-Z, and I'm like, no, I don't like Jay-Z. Like, he's one of my favorite rappers. Like, you people are choosing to get offended for Jay-Z, and he's off somewhere, right, in his mansion, not giving a damn whether people like him or not, right? And I'm like, people do get offended for other people. I'm like, what are you not on like Jay-Z? What is going on? Like, so I don't indulge like I used to back in the day because it wastes a lot of time. So I just give people their, okay, whatever issue you had was way before you looked at me. So I'm like, I'm gonna leave you with it. Patrice, what do you have for us as far as resolve?
Yeah, I think our biggest issue with the reason why things are not getting resolved, and if we can just, understand and come to an understanding that sometimes we're just not really listening to each other. I said on a platform, I'll give you a quick example, and a young man said, he's looking for a wife, and he was like, but what I'm seeing, I'm not finding. He said, even in the church, he was like, I want a fit woman, and I'm seeing just a bunch of, fat women or obese women, this and that. And then the women partook that and went at him, was like, well, you need to go where you're fed. He didn't say he was looking for a church where he can get fed the word. He said what he saw when he went to church, the type of women. And that got taken all the way out of content. And women came up on the panel and they was coming at him. And I was like, oh my God. And even I saw it. I was like, they did not hear what he just said. So it's the listening that caused the discord too. So I think if we can do more of that and less talking sometimes it's just good to just listen. And sometimes you really can get it, and it won't be all of these gender wars, if you will, because it's easy to just, put out the cat claws and go at somebody, or the boxing gloves to go at somebody just because they said this one little thing that you think you heard, but you really didn't. You done took what I said now and you done twisted it.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Patrice. So true. Frank, okay, guys. Unfortunately, I have a prior engagement. This is going so good. So I'm mad that I have to go and end it. But the next one is on Talk with Frank Goodin. Please subscribe and like. You guys are watching right now. So please click like or unlike, whatever your choice is. I accept them all. And the next show is going to be on Talk with Frank Goodin. Please subscribe to this channel, On the Block with Jen. It's here if you need to email me, on the block with Jen at Gmail. We're going to be on Frank's page next on his channel, Talk with Frank Goodin. Talk with Frank Goodin. Please subscribe. Hit the notification bell. This has been Objections. Thank you for objecting respectfully but fiercely. My earrings didn't come off. I still love all of you. So thank you for joining us on the panel and the comments. I had to block just one person today. Someone was triggered. We had to get rid of them. We're not going to be triggered here. We don't do vitriol here. All right, guys. So really loves and hugs for everybody. I don't have a little outro, fancy outro like Frank has. So I just have to say goodbye and shut you guys down.
Well,
Right back at you, Jen, and panel. Much love.
Let me jump in real quick before y'all go.
Un beso.
Yeah, just real quick. So this is just basically 2 or 3 sentences. This is why I love Objections, guys. We always find a way to do what we're doing now. We discuss it, we go in, but then we all come with these beautiful solutions and suggestions for how we can fix things. And so I just love each and every one of you guys for doing what you do here and the way you contribute and the way you follow. Also, real quick, we might not necessarily be on my channel next time. We do want you to go and subscribe. We might be coming back over here because Jen and I cooking up something, and we might end up, coming back here for this next one. So
that's right. Wait, mañana.
Yeah. So we might, that's that mañana. Yeah, hasta mañana. We're gonna do it.
That's right. I'm sorry. Tomorrow is gonna be. I'll just give you a little hint. It's gonna be hot. I will have hopefully 2 members of the LGBTQ plus AAXWYZ on the panel. It's going to be coming straight from the horse's mouth, the whole Dave Chappelle scandal. One of them is Tyra Vera, a comedian, LGBTQ comedian who is off the chain. I think you guys are going to be very, very surprised by his opinion on the LGBTQ, and also Lily, a transgender woman. It's going to be very, very interesting tomorrow. And we're going to object and debate the whole Dave Chappelle thing. And my question for them is homosexuality being weaponized against heterosexuals, which is different than trying to, the attack on the feminization of Black men. I'm talking about, is homosexuality now being weaponized against older
Mm.
She about to start
Oh,
something.
this gonna be good.
Ooh boy.
This gonna be good.
Okay, so
Mhm.
it's gonna be a nice panel. We'd love to see you all here tomorrow. We don't know the time yet, but keep checking back. It'd really be good to get you guys here tomorrow with your really dope objections.
Oh
Okay.
yeah, we're about to do our objections things. Yes, I just wanted to kind of point that out, guys.
Thank
Crazy
you.
about
See,
that.
this is why we partners, because I would have
Yes.
forgot. I'm running out the door right now.
All good.
All right, guys. Good night.
All right, guys. Good night.
Have a
Buenas
good night,
noches.
guys.
Good seeing y'all.